Senator Stoker.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. I rise to speak in support of this bill before the Senate. It will enact the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement that was signed in March, and it is the latest success in the coalition government's ambitious trade agenda. Following remarks in the other House from the Labor Party, which showed at best tepid support for the TPP-11, I am delighted to see that those opposite now are in support of these important bills today, and I commend them for it. The coalition team consistently supports increased free trade agreements with our international partners. We're a team that recognises trade as a major economic driver for industry, particularly in my home state of Queensland. The confident trading approach taken by the coalition government will see our farmers and manufacturers more competitive in the Asia-Pacific region into the future. The TPP-11, which will enter into force before the end of this year, pardon me, strengthens our existing free trade arrangements in the Asia-Pacific region. Parties to the agreement include Canada, Chile, Japan, Brunei, Malaysia, Mexico, Peru, New Zealand, Singapore and Vietnam. It will eliminate 98% of tariffs on our exports in a marketplace consisting of over 500 million people with a combined GDP of $13.8 trillion. Last year, nearly a quarter of all Australian exports went to TPP-11 countries. This deal will see preferential access given to the additional markets of Canada and Mexico for the first time, the world's 11th and 15th largest economies respectively. The modelling shows that the TPP-11 will see $15.5 billion, or a 0.5% increase in net annual benefits to our national income by 2030. The passage of this bill into law is incredibly important for rural and regional Australian industry, especially for those who are already doing it tough dealing with the difficult circumstances of the drought. The economic prosperity for communities throughout regional and rural Australia depends upon strong export markets. Farmers produce more than there is demand in this country, and that's something for which they should be commended and supported. The increase in trade that the TPP-11 will deliver increases the wealth of our nation, and it concentrates that opportunity into areas that are doing it tough, like rural and regional agricultural industries and like the manufacturing sector. As a net exporting country, greater access to the international market will not only benefit our farming communities, but it will enhance opportunities for our manufacturers too. Across Australia, iron, steel, aluminium, paper and leather good manufacturers will benefit from the TPP-11, and in Queensland this extends to the agriculture, resources and coal industries. So let's not be mistaken. More trade means more Australian jobs every day of the week. We are a trading nation, and the enactment of the most comprehensive trade deal ever negotiated will see more Australians employed directly and indirectly in the exporting, manufacturing and farming industries. The TPP-11 is expected to reduce compliance costs for Australian exporters. Mr Acting Deputy President, I get pretty excited about a reduction in red tape, and that's something we will deliver with the TPP-11. When exporting to the various nations under the agreement at present, there is at the moment 8 separate forms currently required, and that will now be streamlined to a single set of documents for our free trade agreement partners. The arrangements that are in place are even more complex for non-free trade agreement partners, and anything we can do to make doing business simpler and easier for Australians in business is a good thing. Australians will also benefit from being able to self-certify the origin of their goods for export, unlike the current outgoing system, where non-preferential certificates of origins had to be sought. These are just some of the ways, simple but practical, that the coalition government's ambitious and confident agreement with our international partners achieves greater efficiency for Australian exporters. An example of the real benefits that this deal will provide is the advantage from which beef exporters from Australia will benefit within 2 years, when the tariffs they face will be 13 percentage points lower than their United States counterparts, one of our most significant competitors. Our manufacturers will benefit from the elimination of tariffs on industrial goods. Raw wool will see the immediate elimination of all remaining tariffs. Improved market access for our cereals and grains to the Japanese markets, including new quotas on barley. Mexican tariffs on wheat, currently sitting at 67%, will be eliminated within 10 years, in addition to the elimination of the 115% tariff currently on barley that goes into Mexico, and that will be done within 5 years. Dairy, pork, cotton, sugar and rice growers will also benefit from the TPP in similar measures. I could go on and on listing who and how this deal will benefit each of our rural and regional industries, but suffice to say that more products produced in Australia will have a market to go to, with returns that will benefit Australians from coast to coast. And so, given these significant benefits, it's really important that Australia implements the TPP-11 as soon as possible to ensure that we have a competitive advantage. The TPP-11 will enter into force 60 days after 6 member countries have ratified the agreement. Currently, 3 countries, Mexico, Japan and Singapore, have ratified the agreement, and a number of other countries, including New Zealand, Peru and Canada, have indicated that they will ratify the agreement in the coming months. If the TPP-11 were to enter into force this year without Australia having done so, our exporters would be placed at a significant competitive disadvantage. We risk other countries having superior access to the beef, dairy, cheese and wine markets, for instance. So that's why we need to move now to implement the TPP-11 and maximise the advantage that we can gain for Australian exporters. It's worth pausing to observe that the TPP-11 is an important example that we can point to of the way in which this government has demonstrated leadership when things looked difficult. Because reaching a deal for the TPP-11 was far from guaranteed. When the United States withdrew from the negotiation process early last year, the chances of securing the important agreement were far from certain. With no guarantee of success, nevertheless, this government chose to stand firm and pursue the agreement rather than to retreat or give up. And while the Leader of the Opposition in the other place preferred retreat, calling the deal dead and labelling those on this side of the House or this side of the chamber delusional, the government continued to advance Australia's agenda of free trade and open markets. I'm delighted to say that this government was successful in the process, in its dogged determination to secure more opportunities for Australian producers and manufacturers. It has delivered once more. It's also regrettable that the actions of those who represent the Greens political party demonstrate that they don't understand the benefits of free trade to Australian industry and jobs. So, while the coalition government gets on with the job, the Greens, in their dissenting report to the Legal and Constitutional Affairs Legislation Committee's inquiry into these bills, now being discussed before the Senate, details a striking ignorance about the benefits of free trade. It's rather curious that in their dissenting report they claim that agriculture and manufacturing industries will be damaged by the TPP. The source for those concerns, a recent modelling report titled "Australia Will Gain from Continued Asia-Pacific Trade Integration," seems like an odd source for reaching that conclusion. While their dissenting report rejects passing these bills for their impact on agriculture and manufacturing, we on this side of the chamber accept it for that very reason. Because, Mr. President, or Mr. Acting Deputy President, the impacts on these industries will be greater wealth, more jobs, more opportunity and more choice for our regional and remote communities. And while we are strongly focused on creating greater export opportunities, the Greens seem to be more concerned about burdening our international markets with more and more tax-like effects. The government knows that Australia is an open trading nation whose prosperity now and into the future depends upon our export markets. It depends upon trade. For example, 1 in 5 Australian jobs rely on international trade, with that trade equating to 40% of our GDP. 40%. It's no small measure. And so today is a timely reminder of which parties are focused on delivering for Australia and which parties think that produce grows merely on the shelves of supermarkets. The Liberal National Government has been focused on trade and creating more opportunities for Australia's farmers, families and businesses for every single day since our election in 2013. 5 years ago, only 26% of our goods and services trade received duty-free or preferential access to overseas markets. During the time we have been in government, this has substantially changed. We have concluded or updated 7 free trade agreements. 7. Including with China, Korea, Indonesia and Japan, providing us with unprecedented access to overseas markets and bringing down prices for consumers. These agreements now account for nearly 70% of our trade, with current negotiations potentially taking that figure up as far as 88%. In 2017 to 18, Australia achieved record exports of $401 billion, and our global trade surplus was $6.3 billion. The TPP-11 continues on this work, and it's just another example of our tireless commitment to investment, jobs and trade. The TPP-11 is truly a next-generation trade agreement and a significant moment for open markets, free trade and export opportunities for working Australians. The agreement will increase national income, it will remove tariffs, reduce red tape and expand export access for Australian farmers and Australian manufacturers. It is for these, I suggest very good reasons, that I strongly support Australia's entry into the TPP-11, and as a consequence, I support the passage of these bills.